how far we have come. Maybe on the show, but more around South Carolina baseball in the last couple of weeks. The story continued to rise up to the pinnacle of the season. No doubt, Friday, Saturday, big wins over Ole Miss, top 5 team. First time since 2012 now. The Gamecock baseball program has 3 straight SEC series wins, a far, far distance from where we were earlier in the year, talking about 10 straight SEC series losses, Bill.
Just and the way they won the games, and then even yesterday, here's where the weird thing about yesterday is. There's people walking away so upset and disappointed, having the bases loaded. What is it, the 3-hole hitter, I think, for 4-hole, whatever Stokes is, I forget, I think 3, up, and you don't win the game. And, like, if you'd have sold this, hey, beat the number 5, team number 4 team, depending on which poll you're looking at the beginning of SEC play, win 2 of 3 and lose the third in extra innings, people would be like, yes, I'll take it. Give it to me. And now people are like, really? You didn't sweep? Come on, guys. I mean, you really let us down. I mean, what? If you'd have said this after the PC game 3 weeks ago, you're right. What a difference. And all of a sudden, this team, I said it on Friday. If they were to go in and win this series, I think the conversation all of a sudden turns and talk about a drastic turn to what can this team do in the postseason? I mean, like, all of a sudden the conversation is entirely different from, oh, will they get there? Maybe they won't get there. I don't know if they can get there, to now all of a sudden, okay, what can this team do in the postseason? Because they look as hot as any team in the country.
13-11 in the SEC after taking the first 2 games, and they didn't just take the first 2 games of the series, Bill. They absolutely dominate those games against an Ole Miss team that came in basically a dominant team of their own, and they give up double-digit runs in back-to-back games. I believe I read for the first time since 2010, so this just doesn't happen to Ole Miss. 13-5 on Friday night, 11-6 on Saturday, and it wasn't even that close. It was 10-1 at one point, and Ole Miss gets most of those runs, I think, late in the ball game. Yesterday's game, as you mentioned, ended up going to extra innings, and Ole Miss taking that one 6-5, the final score, and 10 to avoid the sweep. The Gamecocks almost completely wiping out one of the best teams in the country, just barely miss out, and you mentioned how it happened. Kind of went down. They had the potential tying run on third base and could not quite get them in for 3 straight guys in the 10th inning, and that's how that one ends. A disappointing finish to an otherwise great weekend. So it'll be our job this morning to keep that in context. Also over the weekend, former Gamecock Grayson Griner gets called up to the big leagues and gets a hit in his very first big league at bat. Congratulations to the Blythewood native, who's just had his first child and has been relatively recently married, and a lot has gone on for him. Another example of Gamecock baseball, things going well for not just the current Gamecocks, but former Gamecocks as well. So quite the weekend from that standpoint. But you mentioned it. It's not just that South Carolina baseball has gotten better. Like, teams do that all the time, right? It's that the story around this year's team has completely shifted. Like, completely. We were asking after the first series win, basically one of the first series wins, what do you think Gamecocks will make the NCAA tournament? They got themselves back in the conversation, right? Got themselves back in the conversation with the sweep against LSU for sure. And still, the confidence was not even over 50% for our show, which is Gamecock heavy, and the confidence and optimism is typically towards the top end of the spectrum. And now it has gone from that to a dominating performance and almost another sweep against one of the best teams in the country, and still doing it without dominating starting pitching. Adam Hill was really good on Saturday. Outside of that, the Gamecocks didn't have dominating starting pitching for sure. It's just the bats have been overwhelmingly good since that Presbyterian loss 7-4 on a midweek game. Since then, the Gamecocks averaging close to 10 runs per game and doing it against some of the best teams in the country.
Well, you weren't here for this. We about lost John on Thursday.
Okay.
And Trey Dyson had to give him a talking to after the student section, because I posed the question to John and Claudia on Thursday around 7:40-something. Are you guys kind of back on board? Are you guys kind of a believer And boy, old John Wagner, our student section, who then came in, did a good job on Friday, comes in, and boy, he went strong. He said, "No, I am not on board. I don't care what you've done these last 2. You have to prove it to me against Mississippi." And we all sat here and went, "Whoa, man. I mean, they've been pretty good." And John said he was strong. And so I was looking to see if you were tagged in it just now. The tweet from John Wagner on Friday night, May the 4th, says there may or may not be some eating of words after this weekend considering the start for Carolina baseball. But I think there was a lot of people like that. And that was kind of my point. There's such an investment in South Carolina baseball that I think there was a lot of people kind of like our buddy John this weekend who was going, all right, if you can beat Mississippi, I'll get back in. If you can do it. And not only did they do it, they did it in dominating fashion. Again, I think there's people who are disappointed today that they didn't pull off the series sweep. But again, the outlook for the postseason is entirely different today than it was 3 weeks ago. You're right. Teams get better. Things can change. The drastic turnaround in this baseball team and what they've done the last 3 weekends, can they keep it up? Can they go on the road to Missouri this weekend they get Missouri here? Can they finish up senior weekend against Missouri and then go on the road to Texas A&M? Obviously, all of a sudden, now tomorrow night's game or Wednesday night's game, I believe, against College of Charleston looks entirely different. You probably feel a little bit better about that one going in. Just a weird, wild 3 weeks for South Carolina baseball. And this past weekend, I think you hope not the exclamation point. You don't hope that this past weekend was the high point that is building to something bigger and better.
But it is certainly the high point so far as the rise of Carolina baseball on the steep incline, despite yesterday's tough, disappointing extra inning loss to Ole Miss. Bill mentioned it, College of Charleston now. It's a different animal, and after the game yesterday, Mark Kingston asked about the matchup with Chad Holbrook and company this Wednesday, said basically hadn't given it another thought. It is a midweek game. He's been completely engrossed in the SEC. I'm sure that is largely true, but I'm sure he has also been asked about this thing much more than a typical midweek game. It's going to be at Spirit Communications Park here, so technically a neutral field. It's going to be unlike we've ever seen, I think, in Carolina baseball history, that a guy that used to be the coach just last year is in town with his team. And the College of Charleston, a really good team for most of this season. They've almost had the opposite arc of Gamecock baseball.
I'm thinking, you say in Gamecock history, I think you mean all the sports. I'm trying to think of, I can't, obviously, nothing in basketball, nothing in football that stands out. I'm trying to think of the last coach that left South Carolina to go, or when coached. Sparky Woods when coached, I think James Madison or VMI. Richmond VMI, I think it was.
Right,
somewhere.
He was the head coach of VMI.
So, yeah, they totally different.
Right.
I'm trying to think. You say first time in history because Bobby Crimmins, obviously, with South Carolina playing Georgia Tech, never came back. So, not that he ever coached a game either. But, so, yeah, an entirely different experience across the board for South Carolina athletics on Wednesday night.
So, that will be something to keep an eye on. But, again, the picture in the SEC probably much more important overall. And the Gamecocks sit today, tied for fourth. If you didn't keep track of SEC baseball over the weekend, from an overall standpoint, they're in third place by themselves. Only 3 teams in the SEC East have above 500 conference records. That includes Kentucky, Vanderbilt at under 500 now. They're both 2 games under 500. Good baseball programs who are on the wrong side of 500 as we sit here with 2 SEC series left. The Gamecocks at home, like Bill mentioned, against Missouri, and then at Texas A&M. So Georgia and Florida ahead of Carolina in the SEC East standings, and Arkansas, the only team in the West with a better conference record than the Gamecocks. Ole Miss and Auburn with identical 13-11 conference records. Texas A&M 1 game under 1 game under the Gamecocks at 500. And talking about Missouri, they'll come in. They're struggling now. The worst record in the SEC East. They're 9-15 coming to town this weekend. So they've gone the other way, and the Gamecocks have certainly improved their stock tremendously in the last few weeks. Want to talk about that with you this morning. Love Chevrolet phone lines 803-404-6100. We'll get a Frank's Discount Tire poll question up and rolling. I need to hear how things went. I was out Thursday, Friday, doing a family thing over the weekend, taking a trip up to the D.C. area. Glad to be back down here where traffic is not insane.
Nope, not. You missed a great birthday celebration here in studio on Thursday.
Well, I tried to get out of the way so you could have the complete reign of the show. And I came back before the show started this morning, and Jen just said, so you're here to restore order? Mm-hmm. That's all I needed to know.
Good time, man. Thursday, we had cupcakes and hats and It was good. I had a blast.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. I got out of the way, and you guys had fun. Now I'm back.
Is that what it was?
Now I'm back to
The
make
principal's
sure
back, and all the students are like, all right, everybody.
Right, we got to get back to business because this is very serious stuff.
The substitute teacher is now not in charge anymore. Mm-hmm.
Grayson Griner making his major league debut, his first at bat, fouled it back, and it's 0-1. 17 games with Toledo, and he batted .259. Had a homer and 7 RBIs. 12 to 14 family members are here, and he pounds one through the left side for a base hit. What a moment for Grayson Griner. Keep that one, and it's Detroit's second hit of the day.
Another former Gamecock doing it in the big leagues. That's Fox Sports Detroit with the call yesterday. Grayson Griner, 1 hit, 1 at-bat in Major League Baseball. Gets it in the 3rd inning, I believe, for Detroit. They would end up losing the ball game to the Kansas City Royals. His buddy Whit Merrifield didn't do him a whole lot of favors on the base pass. Stole 3 bases off of him. Says he didn't expect to go up against a former Gamecock in game number 1 in his big league career, but that's exactly what happened. And in at-bat number 1 gets career hit number 1. Congratulations to Grayson Griner, the Blythewood standout, former Blythewood High School standout, making it all the way to the big leagues just a couple of years after his solid Carolina career that included catching for Team USA in a summer or two. And now he's in the big leagues with the Detroit Tigers. It's just it's kind of ridiculous to see all these guys just make Carolina a pit stop on their way to the big leagues. Add him to the list of, I mean, how many different guys you want to go with now? Merrifield,
8.
Jackie Bradley Jr., Christian Walker.
8 was the stat on Friday when he got the call-up. He became the 8th guy, 8th current Major League player from South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. So that doesn't even count Michael Roth, I'm guessing, who's not probably currently in there, but has been recently.
8 current guys, 8 former Gamecocks that are currently on a Major League Baseball roster. So
and I know if you're looking for more, I think Evan Marzilli still performing well in the minor leagues. Saw Tanner English doing some minor league stuff over the weekend as well. Those guys still have the possibility to get there as well.
Yeah. So and you're right. Several more that probably can maybe sneak their way in or work their way up depending on certain roster situations. But the run of South Carolina baseball, just the talent that we've seen come through here. I mean, again, you mentioned it. You think about Walker and Bradley Jr., Whit Merrifield. Now you got Grayson Griner. Justin Smoke is out there. A lot of guys. I mean, that's 5 right there. I believe Steve Pierce obviously is 6. So you just kind of start going through the list there. And
Jordan Montgomery.
And
Tyler Webb, I believe, the other one currently in the big leagues right now. But obviously the headline, the current Gamecocks, what they did over the weekend to an Ole Miss program that came to Columbia in the top 5, number 4, I think, in most polls. And the Gamecocks absolutely dominating Friday and Saturday, out to a 12-2 lead on Friday. It was 10-1 on Saturday. The final score is a little bit closer than those games actually were. And then Carolina with a chance to sweep yesterday, but couldn't get a late runner in and missed out on a couple of opportunities. Again, a bunch of hits, 42 combined. I believe it was 13 again yesterday, but they lose that one in extra innings, 6-5, the final score. Ole Miss surviving and escaping Columbia with 1 win.
And the thing that I kind of asked about as we came out of the Vanderbilt series was having that kind of extra day off, not having a midweek game. Would South Carolina lose any momentum going into that big series, or did you want to kind of keep playing? And obviously did not lose any momentum whatsoever, did not kind of get a little rusty having an extra day off, and the way that they were able to kind of keep rolling along, very, very impressive. And you get the midweek game here. Now you get a Missouri team that's ripe for the picking. They're struggling mightily, and then you go on the road for the season finale against Texas A&M.
So the question or the conversation has become not if Carolina is going to make the NCAA tournament, but if they are going to do enough to actually host an NCAA regional. It's Even as I say this out loud, it's difficult for my brain to catch up with the words because of where we were sitting here just, 2.5 weeks ago? 20-17, 10 games ago is where Carolina sat after a loss to Presbyterian. And at that point, there's no one out there that thought Carolina baseball, that had Carolina baseball in the NCAA tournament field of 64. And now they have shot their way into, I think, certainly the top 25 conversation overall. And we saw they were ranked as high as 14th in the country by at least one poll. But in the conversation of the best 25 teams of the country, and that means you have the chance to work your way into a top 16 type national seed. It would take a lot, but I mean, with what we've seen with 8 of the last 10 wins, who's going to rule it out at this point, Bill?
Well, I feel like when I said that in hour number 1, you kind of looked at me and was like, no, that doesn't make sense at all. But all of a sudden you start to look at the numbers and you go,
no doubt.
It's very realistic. It's not something that, as we see here today, that I think you would project them to do. They need to win both series. They need to win both the Missouri and the Texas A&M series, which all of a sudden seems very realistic. They need to win their midweek games. They probably need to win a game or two at the SEC tournament. But I mean, it's not something with the way this team's playing that you go, no, that's not going to happen. That's crazy talk. Why are you even suggesting that? They're going to be in the conversation, especially when you look at the RPI compared to Kentucky. Again, some of it will come down to what the NCAA tournament committee places importance upon in that room. When they look at the schedule and they see the early season losses and the bad losses to the in-state lesser opponents and how they view that, but also how they view the season-ending stretch. You win the next 2 series, you have won 5 straight SEC series. That's going to be hard to go against when you start looking at somebody hosting a regional site.
And that's stat number 1 that needs to stick out with you today if you haven't paid a ton of attention to what's been going on over the weekend. For the first time since 2012, the Gamecocks have now won 3 straight SEC series. 2012, the last time the Gamecocks played for the national championship, coming off the back-to-back national championships. Also, I think the other stat that stood out to me is that Ole Miss, a really good baseball program, gave up back-to-back runs in that Friday and Saturday game for the first time since 2010, I believe it was. So really standout performances over the weekend, not just stand out this year. These are things that haven't been done in a long time. And when you're talking about doing things for the first time since 2012, I think that is an instant marker that this year's team has moved to a different level for sure. And a guy who got to see it in person, behind the plate, and he made the announcement on Friday when I wasn't even here. Boy, I'm sad I missed that. But fortunately, Gamecock Larry, our favorite 83-year-old caller, is on the Love Chevrolet phone lines right now at 803-404-6100 to tell us all about it. Good morning, sir. This is going to be
Hello.
Oh, hello, Gamecock Larry. If we need to hit you back in a couple of minutes, you need to take care of something, that's okay.
No. I moved my phone just now. Let me tell you something. Wild Bill, think positive. Get off those about the Gamecocks last week, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Forget about what they've done. Just think what they're going to do. They're going to win 5 out of the next 6. But I called Tom and them Thursday afternoon, and I hung up the phone, and some gentleman from Dick Smith, something up in Lexington, called me and asked me, he said, Gamecock Larry, when do you want to go to the game? What day do you want to go to the game? I said, I'd like to go to the game. Let me see. I can't go Friday because it's too late. Sunday, I want to try to go to church. I'd like to go Saturday. He said, I got you 2 tickets, buddy, to go to the game right behind home plate. Well, so my brother-in-law went up and got all, my son-in-law went up and got all the information, got the tickets, went on out there, and I got there about an hour early. Anyway, they got me I got a golf cart around the gate 4. And the nice ladies down at gate 4, they really treated me good. Got me a chair to sit down in and wait for the gates to open. And when the gates opened, they got an officer that took me to my seat. Showed me how to get to my seat, walked right with me, put me in my seat, had a rail on the left, a rail in the front, a rail in the back, and I had my horse collar around my neck to support the neck, and I sat there and I watched that ball game Saturday, and I had a ball. I want to thank Mr. Joel Thompson up at Lexington, up at Dick Smith Automotive. But he was really great, and I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. And I'm got a call now, try to get me some tickets from the ticket office, and we're going to sweep Missouri. No predictions. I'm sorry. Forgive me. But we're going to be okay. we are going to host a regional. Go Gamecocks. Nice talking to you. And again, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Really appreciate it. Go Gamecocks.
I love the non-prediction predictions. Gonna win 5 out of 6. Gonna sleep. No predictions.
There's a lot of details into what all went into Saturday.
I enjoy the details and stories.
Also, is he now a paid endorser on our station?
No. He's an unpaid endorser.
Okay. Checking.
I'm guessing his services are available, though.
Free tickets, man. You get Gamecock Larry's endorsement. It's really
Fantastic. Glad Larry's in a good mood this morning. Hope they find his phone.
Is that what they were looking for?
I think that was the issue going into it.
Either that or the tablet.
I'm never quite sure exactly what's going on in those phone calls, but I enjoy them nonetheless.
2-0 to Matt, swung on and hit well to right. Back goes Olenek. He's just going to watch this one sail out. The first hit of the game is a big fly, and it equals the first run of the game for South Carolina. Senior Matt Williams with his third home run of the season.
That started things right for the Gamecocks. Derek Scott on the call there for Carolina, the Gamecock IMG Sports Radio Network. That was the Saturday game where it ended up being a 10-1 lead for the Gamecocks and an 11-6 final score there. Not as close as that, obviously, 10-1 lead was. And that's how it went Friday and Saturday for Carolina, losing just yesterday's game in extra innings by a run, 6-5, the final score. So 42 hits total for the Gamecocks. And for the first time since 2012, winning their third straight SEC series. This team has come just light years, miles away from where they were. I know you're getting some questions in via your Shepherd's Glass inbox there about the Gamecocks RPI and where that stands and how that might factor into the NCAA tournament. Right now, number 42, according to the RPI I'm looking at warrennolan.com. Missouri up at 31, and Texas A&M, the other SEC opponent the Gamecocks have left, at 15 in the country. I think you're right on this, Bill, as far as RPI and the NCAA tournament. I use it just as a gauge, just to throw out there. I don't think it's as important in college baseball as it is in basketball, but just as a number to put beside a name and get more of a national outlook on how people are looking at your team. But because the SEC has been so good this year, they're going to get a bunch of teams in, 9, 10, 11 possibly. We'll see what the number ends up. And then they're going to have a certain number of hosts in there, how many it will be, and if Carolina can continue to win these final 2 SEC series, they get in that conversation. There will be 16 teams hosting a regional, and the SEC will certainly have its fair share. The Gamecocks right now in a tie for 4th overall in the conference.
42. I'm trying to again, I don't think RPI is going to be the end-all, be-all when it comes to it, but certainly Missouri at 31 and Texas A&M at 15. If you can win 4 out of those 6 games, I think that puts you in a prime spot. Probably, as long as you don't lose the midweek games either, maybe slide you into the top 30. Maybe I don't know how exactly all that would work, but I would think if you're
the math would get you they're 29-18 today, right?
Okay.
They won 8 of their last 10 to get there, or excuse me, they're 28-19, so that's flipped because they're sitting at 20-17. Okay. So they've won 8 of 10 since then. 28-19. You win. You mentioned
4 out of 6,
right?
4 out of 6, and then you add
6
2
more wins, right? That would just still be 34 regular season wins by my math, right?
So, yeah.
If you go with the 2 non-conference.
28-19, yes. 28-19, yes.
So you get 34 wins. You get a couple more in the SEC tournament. You get to up to 36. Now, remember, last year's team finished 35-25. Didn't make the NCAA tournament, but never won a conference series towards the end. Lost 8 in a row. And that's the difference here. And it's not just the numbers. It's also who you beat. And winning 2 out of 3 against Ole Miss, winning all 3 against LSU, winning a series at Vanderbilt. These are all more heavily weighted. And then it's also going to be how the tournament committee views this team. Do they view them as, all right, here's what they've been doing when they're 100% healthy, which, by the way, TJ Hopkins left yesterday's game having tweaked his back. So his health moving forward, they're hoping it's a relatively minor issue, but we do not know details on that. You'll probably hear more from Mark Kingston this afternoon when he joins Jay and Tommy, as he usually does in the halftime show on a Monday. Don't know if he'll have any more details for us, but I'm sure that will come up. So does the committee say, all right, as collegiate baseball clearly did last week, ranking them 14th in the country, the Gamecocks. All right, this is who they are now, and let's weight that more heavily than the overall body of work, or maybe you don't subtract as much from bad losses as you might otherwise? Or do you say, no, we have to go 1 through 56, and they did have these losses on the resume, and they haven't done enough? I mean, this is a team in your bracketology just last week from D1 Baseball was a number 3 seed.
Right.
And so now we're talking about them playing their way all the way up to a number 1 seed and hosting. It would take a heck of a run. I think with 8 regular season games left, 6 would be the absolute bare minimum to get that resume to anywhere where it needs to be. You win all 8 games, I think you certainly have a solid case. That would be 16 out of 18 to finish the season and being one of the hottest teams in the country.
No, I'm with you now. If you win all 8, I think you get to host. It's a different conversation, and it's right now one that I think fans enjoy having, and it's a little bit of pressure on this baseball team. And again, having to find out what they're capable of doing under Mark Kingston is going to be pretty fascinating. And this is a team that, again, you're right. TJ Hopkins being healthy is extremely vital to the success of this team. Again, continuing to get outings like you did from Adam Hill on Saturday is going to be very important. You know, I think the thing right now is if you're a fan, you just enjoy the moment. You just enjoy seeing a baseball team that now looks very competitive and seems to have figured out whatever they were trying to do with the hitting. And all because you mentioned it, 30 some odd runs. I forget the exact number. I mean, but it's just a ridiculous number. Something like 82 runs in the last 10 games, I believe.
I think it's even more than that. It's a ridiculous pace.
11 games.
Point.
I mean, it's the way they're hitting the ball is absolutely phenomenal. And can they keep it up? Can they carry the momentum into the final 8 games and build upon it and give themselves a chance to host a regional?
So 29 runs and 42 hits over the weekend, just shy of averaging 10 runs a game again, and doing it against Ole Miss, a team that had not given up double-digit back-to-back games since 2010 in their program, I think is the number. Ridiculous. Lawrence weighing in on the program on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. We were talking about Grayson Griner getting his first major league hit. He did that in his first major league at bat yesterday for the Detroit Tigers. We were talking about other prospects in the minors who could eventually become major leaguers, but we left out one significant name. Correct, Lawrence?
Yes, Max Schrock is in the St. Louis AAA affiliate at Memphis. He was in the trade for Stephen Piscotty with the A's, and he's hitting as of last week. I think it was 350 something at AAA. He had a good year last year with the Oakland A's affiliate, and I forget where that is. But anyway,
Midland.
Just want to mention his name and how he's second baseman, and he's known more for his bat than his gloves, so he has a hard time making it with the Cardinals in the big leagues, I think.
Thanks for the phone call, Lawrence, and just looked it up on MILB.com. It's a great place to go if you're looking for any kind of minor league info. 342 on the season. Max Schrock in his first ever season in AAA, last year in AA at Midland with the Oakland A's organization, hit 321. You go down his list. I remember he came through here in Columbia when he played for Hagerstown after getting drafted by the Washington Nationals in his first full year with their organization. He wasn't there very long. He was only there about half of the season because he hit 326, so they moved him up pretty quickly, and now he's bounced around to a couple of different organizations. That's a good sign, in my opinion, when you're in the minor leagues, especially as a position player like Schrock, kind of undersized, but other organizations see value in you. He was a 13th-round draft pick just a couple of years ago, and since Ole Miss just came to town, it's probably the most ridiculous moment I've seen at Founders Park. Involved Max Schrock, injured. I believe it was a right ankle injury that kept him out significant period of time, but he comes off the bench. Kirk Gibson classic moment, pinch hitting, hits a home run, and I'm down there being camera nerd behind the plate, working over at ABC Columbia back then, and I was usually right beside a member of the opposing team or their program anyway who had the radar gun, was kind of charting pitches, and the poor guy from Ole Miss, he was just like, man, we never win. We can't win here. We can't do it. This place is ridiculous. And Schrock had the most memorable moment that I've seen at Founders Park, doing it in all the drama involved of an injured guy coming off the bench. They needed a home run, and they got it. And, he can hit it for sure.
Because of the injuries, the back and then the ankle, the last 2 years of his career, he'll never go down as, I think, one of the better, more memorable Gamecocks because those injuries really stole his collegiate career. But as you mentioned, with what he's been able to do in the minor leagues, has just been a phenomenal. Could have been, I don't want to say could have been because he's going to probably go on to have a very good pro career. But at South Carolina, just got limited. Ended up being limited because of those injuries that he sustained, and maybe not being able to be the player after that freshman season that we thought he was going to be.
Well, again, too, his career coincided with the Chad Holbrook career. I mean, the first 3 years of Chad Holbrook's era was the Max Schrock era.
Right.
And I think a lot of that goes hand in hand. A lot of accolades coming in and a lot of potential, and just for whatever reason, it didn't quite match up. Certainly how Carolina fans were used to seeing things in that 2010, 11, and 12 run. The National Championship Series. Lawrence, thanks for the phone call, keeping us straight on that one. We mentioned Evan Marzilli, Tanner English, a couple other guys, and there are more. There are tons of Gamecocks across professional baseball, and now one more in Major League Baseball with Grayson Griner yesterday up with the Detroit Tigers. And unfortunately for him, a fellow former Gamecock, Whit Merrifield, stole 3 bases off of him.
Not good on that one.
Not doing him a favor at all.
I think the fans are starting to really appreciate what this team is all about. They understand it's a blue-collar team. They understand it's a team that had to take a lot of gut punches but didn't allow itself to get knocked out, and now it's really fighting back. So I think that's what this state is all about. I think that's what our fan base is all about. They appreciate that, and so I would anticipate our fans continuing to really get behind this team. It's a great thing to see.
Going to be really interesting to see Mark Kingston versus Chad Holbrook Wednesday night, Spirit Communications Park. The Gamecocks up to 42 in the latest RPI after taking 2 out of 3 against Ole Miss over the weekend. Charleston also winning 2 out of 3. They played Towson, but they dropped 11 spots in the RPI just by losing 1 game. They're 73rd, but a solid record, and they will certainly be in the conversation with the NCAA tournament at 32 and 16 overall. Excuse me, a couple of games better than the Gamecocks from an overall record standpoint, and as it is typically. From an in-state perspective, the game Wednesday night probably much bigger for the College of Charleston as far as its NCAA tournament resume than the Gamecocks. Now, you throw in everything else involved this year, and maybe that's a little bit different for Mark Kingston at this point, a former college teammate of Chad Holbrook at the University of North Carolina back in the day, and you have the Chad Holbrook feelings going up against his former program and his former boss and friend and Ray Tanner, the athletics director at Carolina.
I think if this was a few weeks ago and South Carolina was still kind of floundering, and it would take on more of the Holbrook versus South Carolina approach. I certainly think that that's going to be there. Right now, to me, it's more about keeping the momentum going. And the big picture has now not become, okay, just we got to beat Chad Holbrook. It's got to be we simply can't lose this game because we have too many blemishes on the midweek schedule to begin with, if that makes sense. There is going to be that element of Chad Holbrook versus South Carolina fans that want to beat him. But I think right now, for the team, for Mark Kingston, it's more about we simply, if we want to host, cannot drop this game. And it's again, from where we were 3 weeks ago, a totally different mindset.
Mm-hmm. Should be interesting to see how College of Charleston approaches this as well. They have 1 less series left in their regular season than the Gamecocks do. As I'm looking at their schedule, they will play the Citadel on a Tuesday night game, and that one obviously in Charleston, Patriots Point. So technically a College of Charleston home game, and then they'll come up to Columbia on Wednesday. And then they'll turn around. They basically take the weekend off, which is rare this time of year. I guess that's just how they did it there, and maybe they get extra time for exams or however they have their schedule set up. Then they'll play Citadel again next week in the midweek and finish up against UNC Wilmington in the Colonial Athletic Association, where they're in good shape from a conference standpoint, sitting at 14-7, I think, as they roll into today, or as they roll off the weekend, taking 2 out of 3. They won 5 of their last 6 and yet have taken a hit in the RPI. That's a much different situation than the Gamecocks are in, and it's why Carolina now in the conversation for possibly working their way all the way up to a national top seed, top one of those 16 seeds, and being able to host in the first round. Even when you said it first this morning, Bill, I said, come. But then you start thinking about it. You start just knowing how far Carolina has come in the last 10 games, winning 8 of those 10, and doing it against really good programs, knowing that Missouri has a really good national reputation, even though they have the second worst record in the SEC right now, going 21-3 outside of it, helps you get a good national reputation. Texas A&M, obviously one of the better baseball programs out there year in and year out, and they are sitting at 500 in conference play as they sit here this morning at one game behind the Gamecocks in the standing.
And, you got to wonder, I mean, will South Carolina, it's basketball, I get it, but will they get kind of the Syracuse bump like Syracuse seemingly gets every year in basketball? Syracuse 18-14. Let's toss them in the NCAA tournament. Would South Carolina get kind of the perceptional bump for, let's give them a host site because we know that their fans are going to show up. It's going to be a great environment because it's South Carolina, because it's a little bit more of an entertaining attraction. I would be kind of interested, again, how the committee views South Carolina as we come down the stretch if they were to win 4 of the next 6 in SEC play and both of the midweek games.
Should be a really fun finish to the season, a season that just a couple of weeks ago was looking a lot different for Gamecock baseball, and now things are heating up for sure, and the conversations are much more the ones that we typically have this kind of year, I feel like, around here, talking about NCAA tournament baseball.
Nice to kind of talk about it, because 3 weeks ago I was very concerned.
I hear you.
Wasn't sure what we were going to talk about.
NBA playoffs.
3 hours of Kentucky Derby, man.
Oh, man, that's rough.
It's going to be good.
Just running around the mud. People just there to be seen. I'm glad we didn't have to go on the old man rants.
157,000 is incredible.
157,000 people. How many of those do you think were actually paying attention to the race?
7.
That sounds about right.
They showed them at the end when Justify won.